Imagine getting shot in the chest. Most people would have collapsed. Most people would have rushed to the nearest hospital. Theodore Roosevelt. He looked at the crowd and calmly said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know whether you fully understand that I have just been shot." Then he gave his entire speech anyway, for almost 90 minutes. If that sounds unbelievable, that's because it is. But somehow, that wasn't even the craziest thing Theodore Roosevelt ever did. Long before he became president, Roosevelt was actually a very sick child. He suffered from severe asthma. Some nights, he struggled so badly to breathe that his parents thought he might not survive. Doctors told him to avoid physical activity. Take it easy. Don't push yourself. Roosevelt completely ignored them. His father gave him one challenge: build your body. So that's exactly what he did. He built a small gym inside his house. He boxed, lifted weights, wrestled, hiked, rode, day after day, year after year, until the weak little boy everyone worried about became one of the toughest men in America. That determination would define the rest of his life, but then everything fell apart. On Valentine's Day in 1884, Roosevelt's wife died just 2 days after giving birth to their daughter. Only a few hours later, his mother died in the very same house. Imagine losing your wife and your mother on the same day. Roosevelt was devastated. In his diary, he wrote only one sentence: "The light has gone out of my life." Instead of staying in New York, he disappeared into the Dakota Territory. There, he became a cowboy. Not for publicity, not for a photo, for years. He bought a cattle ranch, worked alongside real cowboys, rode horses across the frozen plains, hunted wild game, slept outside through brutal winters, and he absolutely loved it. One day, 3 thieves stole one of his boats. Most people would have reported it. Roosevelt built another boat instead. Then he chased the thieves for several days through freezing weather. When he finally caught them, he arrested them himself, then calmly marched them back to town. This wasn't a sheriff. This wasn't a bounty hunter. This was the future president of the United States. Eventually, Roosevelt returned to politics, but he still couldn't sit still. When the Spanish-American War broke out in 1898, he resigned from his government job because he wanted to fight. He helped organize a volunteer cavalry unit called the Rough Riders. During the Battle of San Juan Hill, Roosevelt repeatedly charged toward enemy fire instead of away from it. His bravery made headlines across America. Almost overnight, he became a national hero. Only a few years later, tragedy struck the country again. President William McKinley was assassinated. At just 42 years old, Theodore Roosevelt suddenly became the youngest president in American history. And he wasn't interested in being a quiet president. At the time, enormous corporations controlled huge parts of the American economy. Many people believed they had become too powerful. Roosevelt agreed. He took some of America's biggest companies to court, earning the nickname the Trust Buster. Some of the richest businessmen in the country hated him. Ordinary Americans loved him, but if there's one thing Roosevelt might be remembered for the most, it's protecting nature. He believed America's forests, mountains, rivers, and wildlife should belong to future generations, not just the people living at the time. So he got to work. He created 5 national parks, established 18 national monuments, created over 50 wildlife refuges, protected more than 230 million acres of public land. Without Theodore Roosevelt, many of America's most beautiful places might look completely different today. But somehow, he still wasn't finished. Roosevelt loved boxing so much that he built a boxing room inside the White House. He regularly sparred with Secret Service agents, military officers, staff members, and even visiting diplomats. He refused to stop until one punch permanently damaged the vision in his left eye. Most people would have slowed down after leaving office. Roosevelt decided to explore one of the most dangerous places on Earth instead. At 55 years old, he traveled deep into an unexplored part of the Amazon rainforest. The expedition quickly turned into a nightmare. Food ran low, disease spread, one crew member drowned, another committed murder and disappeared into the jungle. Roosevelt developed a severe infection and nearly died. At one point, he reportedly told his son to leave him behind because he thought he was slowing everyone down. Somehow, he survived. And then came the moment that perfectly summed up his entire life. In 1912, while running for president again, a man stepped out of the crowd and shot Roosevelt in the chest. The bullet first passed through a folded 50-page speech and a metal glasses case inside his pocket. That slowed it down just enough to save his life. Instead of leaving, Roosevelt checked that he wasn't coughing blood, walked onto the stage, and spoke for nearly an hour and a half before finally agreeing to see a doctor. That's the kind of person Theodore Roosevelt was. He refused to quit. He refused to back down. He refused to let fear control his life. No president was perfect, and historians still debate many of Roosevelt's decisions, but when you look at everything he accomplished, the sick child who transformed himself into an athlete, the cowboy who hunted down thieves, the soldier who charged into battle, the president who challenged powerful corporations, the conservationist who protected millions of acres of wilderness, and the man who finished a 90-minute speech after getting shot, it's not hard to understand why Theodore Roosevelt is remembered as one of the greatest, and certainly one of the toughest, presidents in American history.